the U.S. Treasury market is no longer the preferred vehicle to park reserves into, and it's moving to gold and a marriage between that and blockchain, a trustless system, if you will. I think it's starting to accelerate. You're right. It is being more acknowledged, not only by people like us, but now you're beginning to see it at the highest levels of government and of central banks and commercial banks, and even on down to, to a level of sophistication where you're talking family offices and big money is starting to get it, that because of this K-shaped economy where the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer because of the inflation and the cost of living, something has to be done, or this country is going to float into quasi third world status if we don't.
But if now suddenly we can reinvest our, our infrastructure in, developing these mining companies, then, and if silver and gold goes up in value and we can make money on it and we have rich deposits that were never tapped, it could end up being a positive for us in the long run.
Sure. I mean, you could make the same statement about uranium and all of these critical minerals that have really, due to regulations and restrictions and mostly the restrictions on the environment, a lot of this has expanded to other parts of the world, South America and South Africa and other countries that have exploited their reserves. It's an important deal. It really is.
It could. I mean, Andy, you could think about it as, an investor doesn't sell until the investment is high, right? It could be one of those things where we were forced to hold. I mean, if you look at it that way, we were forced to hold and not take advantage of our resources because of stupid reasons, selfish reasons. And because we were forced to hold, now that we are realizing we need to mine these things, or we're, breaking the chains, the investment opportunity is high at this point.
It is, but it takes a long time to bring a mine.
I know.
Online.
We're talking decades,
years.
Aren't we?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the problem.
And we also have green energy policies. I know that in Minnesota, they have been working for decades to shut down these critical resource mines. And they've done the hoops they make these people jump through to do a mine is incredible.
Yeah, don't get me started on the policies of Minnesota. I left Minnesota largely because of those policies. And
well, it's one of the most critical mines. We have a really rich deposit in North Minnesota that could really bring jobs to the area, but really help the country strategically. And it's sitting there, it's ready to go, and they do everything they can to block it. And it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it is. It's too bad. And I have a client who spent a lot of time in the mining industry up in the Iron Belt up in northern Minnesota. I mean, I'm from Minnesota, so I'm very familiar with it. But the stories that he will tell you, it's crazy. You're right. They've done everything they can to mothball what should be exploited, instead of going around the world and being reliant on every other country, many of which we're not aligned with geopolitically, for things like silver or critical minerals or rare earths or any of the things that we need, is silly.
Well, and listen to this. I dug into this. The mine that they're trying to shut down is actually pretty clean. They're forcing us to get our critical minerals from China, and elsewhere, but most of it from China, who they're talking about pollution. And the pollution that this mine would put out is nothing compared to what the mine where they're forcing people or us to buy it from. And their stats, it's like 10 times the pollution. On top of that, how they're treating their workers, they're not paying them well, and almost like slave labor. So these people who are mothballing it, as you're saying, are using all these reasons, and then what they're doing is forcing us to buy from a place that is much worse than what they claim they're trying to protect us from. So they don't care about these other people or the world at large. It's just one big excuse that makes no sense once you look at the bigger picture.
Well, many of the arguments that we see coming from that side of the aisle lack logic. And, it's at some point you have to think about national security. And when you realize that the U.S. literally imports almost all of its silver, yet it is needed in so many so many respects, it's about time that they reclassified it a critical mineral. It should have been done a long time ago. And the folks in Canada tried to call it strategic about 2 years ago to have it reclassified, and it is. And that's, it's funny because a lot of the things that I've been talking about for a long time, gold and silver, which are really the opposite of the dollar, are now being quietly embraced by the US government, and both gold and silver are kind of no longer contrarian as much as they once were. Now, maybe for the mainstream it still is, but the government is looking at gold and silver as far more than archaic relics from the past. In fact, I think they are looking at gold to be part of the monetary system and looking at silver as strategic and critical as it really truly is, especially in a world that is digital. You talk about transmission of energy. It transmits civilization. Without silver, you do not have the ability to have the infrastructure that is needed to be a growing, thriving civilization. It's really important, and I think it's someone tapped Trump on the shoulder and said it's about time that we do this for this country, and I'm thankful for that. And what they've done is make it a matter of national security and national policy. They put a floor under the price of silver. I do believe that. And then you look at the largest refiner in the world, China, saying, well, we're not going to export very much anymore. It's becoming a battle. Then you look at the supplies on the London Metals Exchange, the LBMA, that are literally being bled dry. We've talked about extensively. Things are going to get interesting. And when we talk about silver, Sarah, I don't tell people to buy it to get rich or to get wealthy. It is wealth. But when you look at the size of the market cap of the silver market, it's a pimple on the elephant's rear end. It's such a small market cap. If you start to all of a sudden throw in government money, you're going to have a battle between the industrials, Tesla, Samsung, Sony, the hedge funds who smell blood in the water, the investors, and the government. All three are going to be vying for the same ounce of silver. The potential is massive, and it's not why you buy it, but it is truly has an extraordinary story behind it.
That's
and
right.
I think government acknowledging
it's
that
interesting.
Puts an exclamation point behind it.
This is an interesting time. Before we close out, I want to talk about tariffs in China, because people have been worried about tariffs causing extreme, inflation. But from what I'm reading and seeing is that instead of digging their heels in and using the Chinese manufacturers, a lot of people are shifting to other countries like Vietnam and elsewhere to get their product so that they're not affected by these tariffs. Is that what you're seeing, and what will that do to global trade?
It's funny because Vietnam is applied to BRICS. I think that a lot of what Trump is trying to do is actually to reshore manufacturing, and you do so that's one way of starting the ball to incentivize, in essence, a weaker dollar. And because many of the tariffs that he's putting on are more like sanctions than they are tariffs. I really do believe that the ultimate goal of this administration is to find a way to bring home manufacturing. The only way to do that is to massively debase the dollar. You even hear Main Street talking about the debasement trade, about the debasing dollar. You let that happen by letting the price of gold and silver go gold in particular and Bitcoin go much, much higher, which devalues the dollar. Case in point, you look at it and compare it to silver. First of all, the dollar's down 8 or 9% against the dollar index this year, but it's down 70% against silver, even with the recent pullback. So the dollar is falling against the barometers, that's gold or silver. And I think that's exactly what they're trying to do, is to devalue the dollar, to reshore manufacturing, to get rid of the reserve status, as the former chief economic advisor for the Biden administration mentioned, and he wrote a report called Dethrone King Dollar. Jared Bernstein, knucklehead he was, but the whole thing is to get rid of the reserve status because of Triffin's dilemma. Vice President Vance has said that. And all of the moves that they are making are saying that you look at Tether, which now has almost 13 billion in gold, and they were at the Beaver Creek Mining Summit, and their CEO of USA Tether, which is a Genius Act compliant stablecoin, is Bo Hines. He was the crypto czar for Trump through August, and they're buying up copious amounts of gold. They are becoming a massive player in it because every stablecoin backed by U.S. Treasury lowers interest rates for the government, provides the synthetic energy to run the government, but that interest is not transferable. So they're taking it and buying gold and Bitcoin. And I think that was the deal that was kind of wink, wink made, where you continue to buy gold as a major player, almost a central bank player, to push the price of the dollar or the interest rates down. But the rising gold price devalues the dollar, which helps you then reshore manufacturing. And as we've talked about before, just to hammer it home again, Judy Shelton, Trump's nominee to run the Fed last time, says, no, they're going to peg the back end of the bond market July 4th next year. Trump told me that multiple times. She says, now you have a 20-year treasury redeemable in gold with zero interest rates attached to it. No coupon, redeemability in gold. You can bring back manufacturing at a zero upfront cost, sell the product into a massively devalued dollar. What all of this means is that if you save in dollars, you're screwed. You do not want to save in dollars. And this is a prime example this year where silver, with its recent pull, it's up 70+% against the dollar, but the dollar index shows its dollar's only down 8 or 9%. Up 70 or down 9, this is the problem. You don't see it unless you measure it against something like gold or silver. They want a devalued dollar. And that the tariffs are just another part of it to push everyone away from the dollar being the world reserve currency. I really do believe that's what they want to do, as crazy as it sounds. It's the only way. When you look at AI that's taken 50% of entry-level jobs, or will within the next 3 years, and 60% of this country without a reading proficiency above the 6th grade, and where the last trillion in debt happened in 71 days, a trillion seconds ago being 31,688 years ago, we're dead if we don't bring back manufacturing. And I think that's what they're doing.
Andy, I don't think it's just entry-level jobs. I think it's most of the middle jobs. I think it's a lot of professional jobs. I almost think the professional jobs would be quicker than the entry-level jobs.
My son was an accountant. He works for me now, thank goodness. But at Price Waterhouse, right out of college, he was getting paid 70 grand a year to analyze the balance sheet of a real estate investment trust. Just like that, AI could do it. And without the headache and the cost and the hassle of an employee. Goldman Sachs issued a report today saying that everyone they're talking to is talking about this, that it's having a more profound effect than they would expect. They don't all say mass layoffs, they say cost restructuring because of AI. And it's a big deal. So if you don't bring back manufacturing, what do you do? How do we service the debt? So this is all about the same thing. The tariffs, to me, were not about, when all the gold and silver was coming back, it wasn't about tariffs. And I don't think it's about what he says it's about. It's more along the lines of getting to the ultimate goal of a massively devalued dollar, much higher commodity prices, to reshore manufacturing and to sell those manufactured goods to the rest of the world in a dollar that isn't the king dollar. And that was the name of Jared Bernstein's report, Dethroned King Dollar.
Yeah, and that's probably what's happening. And I think what's happened too is gold and silver has left this niche thing of preppers.
That's right.
And people are realizing that the language and what you were saying for years is correct. And it's becoming now global finance itself. You're not just this prepping community, it's the backdrop, it's the foundation of global finance.
It's national security.
And national security, it's and industrial use. It's more serious than just prepping and a bunch of lunatics on the, right. It is literally the foundation of global finance, national security, and high tech.
Yeah, and the foundation of finance has been trust ever since 1971 when we closed the gold window. Do you trust us? Well, who trusts us anymore? Truthfully, who does? I mean, we may still be the primary world reserve currency for now because we're the cleanest shirt in the dirty laundry hamper, but who really does trust us? Not only our fiscal irresponsibility of spending, but our geopolitical issues with the world and our track record of doing things like weaponizing the treasury and doing all of these things. This is what has brought about this renaissance of gold and silver coming back into the fold. Silver as a critical element to run a productive economy and country on every level, from military to commerce, and gold because the U.S. Treasury market is no longer the preferred vehicle to park reserves into, and it's moving to gold and a marriage between that and blockchain, a trustless system, if you will. I think it's starting to accelerate. You're right, it is being more acknowledged, not only by people like us, but now you're beginning to see it at the highest levels of government and of central banks and commercial banks, and even on down to, to a level of sophistication where you're talking family offices and big money is starting to get it, that because of this K-shaped economy where the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer because of the inflation and the cost of living, something has to be done, or this country is going to float into quasi third world status if we don't. And I know that sounds dramatic, but the people who have assets are getting richer by the moment, and the people who don't are finding a harder time just making ends meet. And that is not what this country is about. We need to bring back what made this country great, and that is the middle class, a vibrant one that is being decimated as we speak.
Well, and I also think we need to get our arms around what AI really means. How do we train young people to actually use AI in a way that's meaningful, where they develop their skill set as part of AI? And right now, I think most educators are behind the eight ball and they don't know how to use it. And we are not training our people.
I mean, how do you even educate yourself if you just ask your phone what the hell the answer is? I mean, we had to go and use the Dewey Decimal System and go into the library and pull out a book and actually research. Everything I've ever done for all of these years has been reading and researching, and now AI does all that for you. We're breeding a whole generation of illiterate people.
That's right. That's exactly right.
The scariest part. And then you look at you go to the global south, look at China, look at India. They're pumping out, and Russia, pumping out, all sorts of engineers and
scientists,
astronauts,
exactly.
and they're pumping out people that will build their economy, and we're kind of stagnating. I hate to rain on this. I am a patriot and an optimist, but we've reached that point.
Yeah, but being a patriot, and you have to deal with the issues if you're a patriot. You can't just gloss over it and pretend. I mean, you have to be able to deal with the issues. I had a really good show with a neurologist talking about, he also has a PhD in history. He's like really an interesting person. And he's talking about the changing brain, that kids' brains are actually different because of what we value. But we were talking about how you actually use ChatGPT to write a paper, for example. And he has a professor that does it exactly the way I use it. And the way he uses it, well, I write something up, I have ChatGPT fix it, and then I fix what ChatGPT did. And he has his students do that so that they are forced to think about what it is that they're doing and not have ChatGPT to it, and then show them, not have ChatGPT do it from the beginning, and show them the difference of how much better it is when you understand what it is that you're trying to get accomplished. And so and we still haven't figured out exactly how to use it in that way completely. That's just from a writing standpoint, but from so many different angles. Otherwise, we're going to be exactly what you're saying. We're going to have a bunch of illiterate people that have no idea. They haven't learned anything.
Yeah, I think it probably will increase productivity for corporations, but it's also going to put millions of people out of work and create social and political chaos as a result. I mean, it's Pandora's box. The toothpaste is out of the tube; you can't put it back in. But what does it mean? It would be far more beneficial if we were the engine of productivity and of manufacturing. And I think that is what Trump is trying to do. Yep. And it will be painful to get there, but it is something that must be done for your kids and your grandkids, period.
That's right.
I believe that.